Hello, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of AZ Security. My name is Dinan Paardenkoper. I'm a cloud security architect at IT Impressive. And today I have a familiar guest in our midst, and that is Jon. Welcome back, Jon.
Hey, Denat. Thanks for having me back. Yeah, excited to be here, man. Really excited to jump in and talk about some things, kind of pick up where we left off from last time.
Awesome. Yeah, and maybe for the new audience, can you shortly introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, of course. So, hey guys, I'm Jon Hope. I am an M365 Solution Architect and a Microsoft MVP in the security, identity, and access. Yep, maybe a little different than the last one, but yeah, I work for a company called Inforcer, where we standardize tenant configuration for the M365 stack, and I work alongside some of the best guys in the industry. So, yeah, that's me.
I think I think everybody is now jealous and want to work at your company. For
Bring them
today,
on.
we have a new topic around conditional access, or I can say part two, finding the gaps in the existing policies. We talked about it in our preparations, Jon, and you thought straight away, this is the tool I want to show. Can you tell us more
Yeah.
about it?
Yeah, for sure. So this has been a passion project of mine, and actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share some things out and kind of paint the picture here. No PowerPoint, death by PowerPoint on this one. I like just jumping right into it, guys. So let's share this out. So
Let's go.
last time we talked about just conditional access as a whole, right? I gave some of my insights on how I did defense in depth and some of the things that I built out. And a lot of that was showcased through a CA policy template in GitHub that I had organized. And inevitably, what happened is there was a lot of people who reached out, people that wanted to know more and things that we were doing. And when I started my job over at Inforcer, I realized I was doing more with conditional access than I thought I would be. And inevitably what happened was kind of came from a conversation with Nate Hutchinson. Oddly enough, we were talking about conditional access. And what happened was I was doing some token protection on Windows and I broke a bunch of things. And when I did that, exactly. Yeah. So through the hardships comes something awesome. And what happened is, I realized that like I have all these best practices, right? I have all these links that are in my GitHub of like things that other people in the industry have run across that, they have to that have helped them when they're doing conditional access. If you go and look at token protection, there's a massive MyLearn document on it. And I was like, if I had just reviewed all of these things, all the fine print in the MyLearn, I would have been good here. I wouldn't have broke the thing because the answer to my questions was in the MyLearn document itself. So fast forward, I was like, wouldn't it be amazing if all of this stuff was just in a tool and the tool could help me do this more efficiently? And that is essentially what led me to building Conditional Access Policy Analyzer, CA Policy Analyzer. So it was just a culmination of that incident mixed with a bunch of things that I already do, best practices in the industry, right? Like I was probably, I don't think everyone does this, but I used to go to Fabian Batter's research a lot of times where, he talks about the Swiss cheese methodology and all the gaps that exist within conditional access. And I was like, wouldn't it be awesome if the MyLearn documentation, his database, him and Dirk Jan's like research was all in something that I could leverage and showcase the gaps that exist within conditional access more effectively. And so I wanted to, if you guys are cool with it, I'd love to jump into the tool and kind of show you what it looks like. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
cool.
okay.
Let's.
So this is my website right here, conditionalaccess.tech. I hope everyone will go check it out. But the reason I come here first is because this has links to all of my GitHub repositories as well as the tool. So you can launch the tool directly from here. So case in point, this is all web-based. There is nothing being stored on the back end in a database. I'm not selling your data to Google. I want to be very clear about that. But what it's going to look like, one, it's going to give credit where credit is due for sure. Fabian, he did a great job. Dirk's in here and some other names that you'll recognize. But what we're going to do is we're going to just hit connect to tenant, and then we're going to run an analysis. And this tool's evolved quite a bit. I'm really taking a lot of the feedback that the community is giving me and what they're seeing and what they want to see in the tool. And I'm trying to improve and make this better because I work with conditional access, but so do so many people out there, right? And so I don't
Definitely.
know everything that everyone's facing. So yeah, for sure.
And
So
one question in between, John.
yeah,
You press the button to connect. Is it
yeah.
acting on behalf of your credentials in your Azure portal?
It is. It is. So I'm using an Edge profile. So I hit connect and I didn't have to sign in because my Edge profile is already signed in. So it went ahead and passed that through. All the permissions are documented in the GitHub repo. So if you go to CA
Right.
Policy Analyzer, everything's there. It'll showcase least permissions because I've had people ask me, what's the least permissions that I need to actually run it? What does that look like? So all that is documented. Please definitely take a look. Don't take my word for it. Just go take a look at everything. But yeah. And so once you connect into the tool, you're going to notice a few things. One is this brand new interface. This happened recently after a podcast with Nate Hutchinson, where we kind of talked about the idea of implementing some zero trust and persona-based framework items into the tool. So I've gone ahead and done that. So I took, Microsoft has an amazing zero trust architecture guidance, and there's a ton out there from Klaus Jefferson on persona-based frameworks. And there's a lot of big names in the industry that use that same persona-based conditional access. So the idea here on the dashboard is a couple of things. One, it's taking a look at all your policies. So I know, hey, based on my current security posture of this tenant with the conditional access, I've got 14 enabled policies, 8 in report only. We got 28 disabled, and then we've got 50 policies in total. Great, that's awesome. It's doing a breakdown across 3 different pillars: CIS, template coverage, and config quality. All of this is documented in the GitHub. So if you want to learn more about it, definitely we can dive in. You can look at any of those things. But the big thing that it's doing is it's detecting the license that's in use. Because one of the things I hate when I'm doing conditional access is like, yes, I need to adhere to the CIS framework, but I don't have P2 license. So you're telling me to deploy risky users, risky sign-ins. I don't have the license to do that. One of the other things you'll notice, this one's not talked about as much, but workload ID premium. So the concept of service principals isn't necessarily talked about a lot. And the fact that service principals aren't necessarily an interactive user authentication request. And so, there are basically the ways to backdoor through conditional access where service principals aren't necessarily protected. Now, that's a gap, right? So one of the ways you fix that gap is with workload ID premium. And that's a way to then target those non-human identities with conditional access. And so I call that licensing now. But that's a lot on the dashboard, right? So there's a lot just at a quick glance, and I'll come back to it and kind of talk about some of the documentation here. But if we quickly look through the different items, this is again, a lot of this was built for me, things that I wanted to know, and it's been evolved over time. And so the idea of the policies tab is to give any architect a conditional access breakdown on each policy. Maybe you develop the policies. Maybe you're coming in and you're taking over a new client and they have a ton of policies and you don't know what they have, right? So the idea is to be able to examine any of those policies and find specific issues. So what I'm going to do, let's just take a common policy everyone uses. Global grant MFA all users, right? You should be enforcing MFA for all your users. Common. It's a baseline policy that I put for anybody. So there's some information that I want to know about those policies, right? Case in point, is the break glass group excluded? So I'm going to look through, we're going to try to take a look at your conditional access posture and see if a break glass account is excluded. So best practice, you would have a consistent account or group object that is excluded from everything. And we're going to break that out a little further. But there's some other things that, I wanted to be able to showcase and pinpoint within conditional access. And the idea here is excluded apps. So I have any app that's excluded. I want to showcase what that app is and try to why that app may be excluded. So the idea here is this policy has Microsoft Rights Management Services excluded. Maybe you don't know what that is. Maybe you're like, why did someone come in and just exclude this app, right? And so the idea here is it's going to give an explanation of what that application is. So Azure Information Protection falls in line with sensitivity labels. So the reason this is excluded is because when you enable sensitivity labels and you're encrypting content, if you send the message and you're requiring conditional access for everybody, right? Sometimes the user you're sending it to can't decrypt the actual, method. And so what happens is in their email, they get an RPMSG message, and it's a nightmare. They're like, I can't open it. You sent me this message. I can't decrypt it. What's going on? So you exclude that service principal. So that was the idea in mind. We really wanted to be able to go through and examine each of the individual policies and find weaknesses that exist. So you'll notice a couple things. We show the included, the excluded users, and then we show things like findings for the policies. And I'll use this as an opportunity just to get through these tabs because there's a ton here. So want to make sure I'm covering it all. But the idea here is there's a backend database. So the tool has a backend database that's looking at CIS, the CIS framework. Just updated to CIS v7. So it's looking for best practices, but it's also looking for different things. It's looking through the MyLearn databases to understand what Microsoft's guidance on best practices is. And then it's looking at open just telemetry that security researchers have out there. So Fabian Batter, Dirk Jan, all of those guys that have a lot of good information out there. And specifically, if we take a look at, things that Fabian has talked about in the past, the Swiss cheese model. So this is the idea, if you've ever seen his documentation, he's got, kind of a great depiction of what the Swiss cheese model is and what that means. But the idea here is that we create inadvertent weaknesses in our conditional access unintentionally. We select a wrong, setting when it doesn't apply. So like location bypasses or a thing of that nature. Or I did this all the time. I ran this on one of mine and I realized that one of my Intune policies was incorrect. So one of the cases that we call out is the and or operator. Sometimes we say, hey, we want to exclude this device or this device. Well, if you do an or operator versus an and, it satisfies the weakest control wins in this instance. So it doesn't say, hey, this was the strongest, we're going to take this. So say, for instance, you're like, hey, intra-registered and or hybrid joined. Well, if it's intra-registered, which is a lot easier to do, then it suffices for that. And so you inadvertently break some of the policies. And so the idea here was to take all of that information and try to break it out into useful information back to the user, the person that has to go through and actually like go through the conditional access, right? Things like, apps that are excluded that we talked about this, but we want to understand what this app is doing in some of these roles and scopes that may be excluded. Case in point, we talked about things like break glass accounts being excluded. So there's a whole section on break glass coverage. That's one of the first things I want to know when I get in. Are you following good are you following good break glass coverage? So right here, you can see there's a whole findings section on break glass. I see that 38 of the 48 policies currently have break glass. Well, that's an issue. So it's going to showcase, it's going to have a listed out of all the policies that don't have it excluded that I need to go in and fix. And we're going to have some of those right here. So break glass groups not excluded. Here are the policies where they're not excluded. And then just informational on the ones that are excluded. I still want to understand. I want a full picture of everything that's going on within the infrastructure. And I will say this has grown astronomically because there's just so much changing in the identity space. So like case in point, when I started this, there was things that hadn't happened within Microsoft yet. As the tool came to light, Microsoft in March, if you're aware, started trying to fix some of these gaps. So one of the big things that Fabian called out in his research was low-level scopes that get bypassed anytime you have a service principal exclusion. So meaning if you target all cloud apps and you exclude one service principal, every time you did that, there were 4 low-level scopes that got excluded by default. And so Microsoft has started to close that gap. I've got some posts coming out directly around that and the new interface that Microsoft's exposed in order to close this gap. But the big thing is we touch on that. We basically showcase, hey, based on Microsoft Learn documentation, these gaps are being closed. This policy may be impacted by the fact that Microsoft's changing what they're doing on the back end. So that was kind of the idea. The token protection, the one that broke everything. Remember that? That's what led me here. Yep. So this is what broke it. Essentially, I had the policy and I didn't have the device filter. And I was working from an intra cloud-based PC. It was an intra-joined cloud PC, and I was doing all my testing from that. And because of that filter, that's why everything was broke. I couldn't do anything because I didn't have that filter in place. It was down in the MyLearn. I missed it. So this is the concept. This is the idea of what this is set to do. At the end of the day, after you found the gaps, I want to help you with conditional access as a whole. And the way that I found to do that is I already had a GitHub repo with all my policies. So the idea of the template tab is there's a few things that we want to do here. I want to give you access to all my policies. So say for instance, if I'm doing a deployment, I've got all my policies directly right here. So I can go see, hey, this template or this tenant is pretty close. It's got a number of these policies. Well, maybe it doesn't have all the policies, right? Maybe there's a policy that I don't have. I can just download the JSON directly from it. I can go into the repo, or I can just let's just go ahead and download that JSON. And there you go. I've got the JSON downloaded for that. Maybe you go, hey, John, this is great. I don't love your templates. That's fair enough. Fair enough. We're not gonna appease everyone, and that is okay. That was a recommendation that I got from people. People wanted to be able to use their own. So right. I took that feedback and I expanded on it. So two things built in, my baseline and Lewis Berry's baseline right here. So in the dropdown, I have Lewis Berry's baseline. I think Lewis Berry's baseline is a great baseline for everyone getting started. He's got essentially 12 policies that I think everyone should leverage. And those policies are going to be right there. And just like I have in mind, you can go in and you can download the JSON for any of these. You can also seek policies that are similar to it. So you can kind of compare what you currently have and how they align to those policies. So great option for people looking to improve or build on their conditional access. You can also do a couple of other things. So I provide the ability to load a baseline directly from GitHub. So maybe if you have your own framework or your own policies, download the JSON, put them in GitHub, and then bring them in directly from your own GitHub. Two things. Actually, Joey V reached out to me. We were chatting, and we were talking about some conditional access, and I told him I was interested in putting his framework in there because both Kenneth Sirksum and Joey V have very popular conditional access frameworks that people use. So what I did is I went ahead and already preloaded their GitHub repos in the tool. So the cool thing is you can click on Joey V's, and what it does is it's going to load his latest conditional access framework directly in the tool. So the cool thing you can do with that is you can then look through all his policies, same exact policies and templates apply. You can download any of the JSON. Now, his are going to be the persona base that we talked about, right? That zero trust persona base kind of Klaus Jesperson's zero trust model. He's going to follow that. So I implemented a new thing because I wanted to improve on mine. So I said, okay, I've got a ton of policies. I wonder how far off I am from the persona-based zero trust model. And so I enabled baseline gaps. So say I take Joey's zero trust kind of persona-based model. I have this new tab, which is called the baseline gap tab. So the baseline gap tab is looking at my template. It's looking at my tenant, and then it's comparing it right now against Joey V's conditional access baseline. It's basically saying, hey, you've got policies that meet a number of these criteria, but you don't have any of these that are currently outlined. And so what I do is I give you a little download deployment bundle, and you can download all the policies that don't actually exist currently. And so what that did is that just gave me a nice little bundle. It's just showing the window. Inevitably, it's giving me a bundle of 18 policies that I can get ready to import the JSON and get into my tenant. So I would be able to do that.
If I can interrupt you shortly. So you have the possibility to bring on your own policy sets, verify them, and the missing ones you can extract and basically import it in your own tenant, right?
Exactly. So case in point, I can show you an example. Let's do this. So I looked at this and I said, okay, I downloaded the bundle. So what I can do is I can go over here, and then from here, I can go upload policy file. And what's inevitably going to happen is it's going to showcase all of the policy files. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm just going to upload one of the JSONs that downloaded. So if I come over here, here's the JSON that downloaded. I'm going to take one of, unfortunately, I don't have all of them showing on the screen because it's only showing that. So just like that, take my word for it. There was his whole bundle of 18 policies. I went in and I got one of his policies, And I'm going to save this, hide this, we're going to save. Oh, and he does have, yep, this, of course, I picked a P2 and this is a non-P2 license.
Oops.
Demo fail, guys. Demo fail. That's fair. Let's see if we can, yeah, do that one. All apps, all windows, save. There we go. So assuming you have the correct license, that's still an important thing that has to be adhered to. You can import it. And so his policy is now in there, and I can go back and I can look at the policy exactly how it was. And so then now I have that policy. The last thing, trying to let me see if I can. I really have built a lot to this tool that now that I'm like going through it, I'm like, man, there really is a lot these days in it. So at least in the US, right? It depends based on locale. EU NIST2 is going to be the bigger one, Cyber Essentials,
Yes.
right? But in the US, which is where I'm currently located at, a lot of it revolves around CIS. And so the idea was I wanted to, at the end of the day, no matter what the policies are, I wanted to be able to adhere to a compliance framework. And so I adhere to the CIS framework, and I basically showcase how you align to what CIS recommends. So you can see here, how I'm doing. Do I have these policies? Which ones am I missing? And what it'll do is it's also going to showcase, hey, you do actually match on this policy and it does fulfill the criteria, but it's not turned on. You need to enable that, right? That's still going to fail because it's not on, so it's not enforcing. So we're providing context back on what you need to do to get into CIS alignment. And the idea at the end of the day is to make sure that you have everything. I'm going to provide guidance. So if you're like, hey, I don't know how to do this, I'm going to give you that. And then inevitably, we're going to give you the JSON in the template tab to go download and make sure those things are getting incorporated correctly. So CIS is all about trying to adhere to that framework. And then this was a recent ad as well. The locations, still working on this aspect of it, but a lot of times people target policies and they want to use trusted locations, or they use trusted locations within their targeting. Well, the idea here is I want to be able to pinpoint if you're targeting trusted locations and you haven't trusted all the locations, because it may become a gap. You may say, hey, I thought this was trusted, but I didn't actually mark it as a trusted location. So I'm going to show you each of the individual locations, how you're adhering to them, and if they're trusted or not. And then we can break these down. We can look at the IP ranges. We can look at the different information there, so you can take a look and see what it is you need to, again, make the best decisions for the organization. So
that looks awesome. That looks very, very awesome. I think if I look into the updates, if I can ask a question in between.
Yeah.
How many times does your tool needs to be updated? Is it once a week? Is it? I mean, for the users, they don't see it, but just curiosity.
Yeah, they don't actually see it. And so, if anyone is actually interested, I put an entire change log. So if we actually go over to the CA Policy Analyzer, it's all open. I'm not hiding anything. You guys are more than welcome to go look at everything. And then what I have, this would be the latest one. So it looks like it was about 2 weeks ago when the last changes came in. I can tell you, with the cost of AI rising, it is getting a little hard. I'm not going to act like I'm the number one coder of all time, right? Like I use a lot of Claude. I'm leveraging capabilities of AI to make sure that I'm keeping these things up to date with things that I'm seeing. But I do have some automation that's letting me know when Intra posts new security updates and things of that nature, so I can then go review them, see how things are changing in the industry. There's going to be some upcoming changes with the whole Agent 365 and the fact that now targeting agents is going to require a separate license, right? So in preview, we were able to target agents directly in, and I had policies around that. So we're going to have to break some of that stuff out. So there are a number of updates, and luckily people have been really banging this one home and providing a lot of feedback to me. And I appreciate that, because it helps me make the tool better if I know where the gaps are and what people are seeing as issues. It's not perfect, right? I don't think there's any perfect tool that finds everything. The goal is to make it more useful. And
right, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing that keeps me going is the idea of, like, people have sent me like messages and go, I actually found a really big critical vulnerability with your tool. Like, this is awesome. And I'm like, that's what I want to hear. Like, that's what keeps me going. Like, I love hearing that from people. So, and again, the whole goal is also to be able to kind of help people from an MS Learn perspective. So like case in point, right? That low level privilege scopes and everything that happened with Microsoft. I still want to guide you and direct you back to the Microsoft guidance. So I do present an MS Learn section, showcase, hey, this would be one of those affected policies. And I take you right back to the MyLearn. So you can see right here, hey, conditional access for all resources. This is what we're talking about. This is the behavior that's changing. This is what's happening. So again, don't take my word necessarily for it, right? Go confirm with Microsoft, go take a look at it. Same case in point, some things I've had recently, that token protection, right? Like showcasing what's going on there. It's going to take you into the MyLearn. You go into the entire thing. There's a lot in this one, so I would say there's definitely a lot to read, but always make sure you're going in and reading the known issues, because the known issues are where the good stuff's at. It's typically in a little purple box or right below it. So for sure.
I agree.
Yeah, yep. Make sure. One last thing, just to bring this home, because I know we're probably running a little low on time, but one thing that has been really helpful, right, is at the end of the day, I need to document everything. And so one of the things that I've been able to do is I have exportable capabilities throughout the interface. So I can export a PowerPoint of all the conditional access. I can also do Excel and then the raw JSON, right? We showcase like how I download the JSON throughout the infrastructure. The Excel, I use this for a lot of troubleshooting. So what I do is, like, if I'm dealing with a client and they're having an issue, I actually have my own CA troubleshooting agent that I built in Claude with a lot of this knowledge and framework skill set, best practices and everything. So what I do is I say, hey, go ahead and export everything into an Excel. Send me the Excel. I put it in there. I let the AI take a first stab at it, highlight some of the key issues, and then I go in and review it. So I'm really trying to optimize my time, right? Make sure that I'm not necessarily spending a lot of time. I've done that on a number of occasions, fixed tons of issues within organizations. One recently was, it called out that the company had duo external authentication, and it called that out. And that was one of the issues that was affecting some of our GDAP connection issues that they were having. So super valuable, just having that ability. I just want to highlight, because sometimes I see people in chats or on the web and they're like, I don't have a great way. Maybe they don't know about Merrill's tool about documenting with his, which is where a lot of the inspiration came from. But at the end of the day, it's like, if I can put everything in here so you can just stay in CA Policy Analyzer and document it, find the gaps, fix the gaps, do it all. That's what it's all about. That's the dream, right? Make it easier for everyone. So
Definitely.
yeah.
If I can rephrase our session combined in a one-liner, what would it be?
That is honestly to make conditional access more efficient by finding the gaps. That is the entire premise of this tool in a nutshell. Right. Yep.
In a nutshell, yeah.
Yep.
If I'm new to this topic, what is your advice on that?
That's a great question. If you are new to this topic, my advice is go watch the first video that we recorded on this exact thing. But no, yeah, I mean, ideally, like I think there's a lot of great resources out in the industry. I hope that you'll take a look at conditionalaccess.tech. I have a ton of writing and blog posts on conditional access as a whole, and so I really hope that you'll take a look at it and really go through. I did an entire 6-part series on breaking down conditional access, the fundamental concepts of why we need to do the things that we're doing, and then jump into something like CA Policy Analyzer. Take a look at your own environment and see where some of those gaps are. See if you align to CIS. Just start there, right? And then from there, build on that topic. So yeah.
That's a great advice. I will add the link under our session below. Jon, I want to thank you very much for your time and also for this great demonstration. I think it's a very powerful tool which simplifies the big topic, right? Conditional access, helping guidance to make it easier to manage, but also getting better view on that. So I really want to thank you, and I'm happy that you came back on the show.
Thanks for having me, Dinant. It was a fun time, man. I really appreciate it. Always enjoy.
Definitely. Let's just round up. For everybody at home, I want to thank you for your time, also for listening. If you have any things or thoughts, please leave them below and we will come back to you. And otherwise, thank you very much and take care. Till next time.
Have a great one. All right.